her every step of the way into teaching, into consulting, into entrepreneurship, and now into motherhood. This is a series called Mom Salon. It's where selfishly, because I'm becoming a mom, I interview the moms that I admire about what it is I'm about to go into, the high highs and the low lows, and I steal their well-earned wisdom from experience. So Corey, thank you for being with us.
So good to see you and to be here to share whatever I can to make this journey a little less lonely is how I think about it.
Corey, I know you've wanted to be a mom your whole life. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, so I was lucky enough to have 3 younger brothers growing up. Some of them would say I was more like a mom than a big sister. And so I just have always loved children. I've always loved caring and nurturing for people. And nurturing people. And so I think being a mom was always something I felt sort of a broader calling to do. I also have, as you know, one of the world's best mothers as my own mom. And so being like her was always something I wanted to do too. And so now I'm lucky enough to have 2 wonderfully adorable and just delightfully frustrating children that I get to call my own. One of whom hopefully is falling asleep and won't hear me talking because she'll want to come join the party. But yeah, it's just always something I felt in my heart was what I was born to do.
Corey, people I know come to you all the time for advice, myself included. Just at a top level, what are the 3 to 5, pieces of advice that you usually tell women as they're like where I am now, which is 2 weeks before baby?
2 weeks. Yeah. I mean, I think like the first piece of advice I always give people is like, you can take or leave whatever advice anyone gives you. Right. I mean, motherhood is just the most amazing thing you'll ever do. And also probably the hardest thing you'll ever do. And so you're going to figure it out and you have to trust your own intuition. I think there's, especially in this day and age where it's wonderful to be so connected and to have all these resources at your fingertips. The reality is it can make you sort of second guess your own intuition. And so learning to just trust your gut and know that, women have been raising children for a long time and women with a lot less capability and resources and support than you, and they've done it successfully. And so, you've got what it takes, even in the moments when it feels like you have no idea what you're doing. I mean, that's actually the secret of motherhood is that none of us really know what we're doing. We're all just faking it. So that's probably the best piece of advice is just, take what you want, cherry pick what you want of what people tell you and ignore the rest of it. Because you're the one who knows your baby best. After all, he's growing inside your belly. And so, no one else will know him ever as well as you do. So trust your gut. I think another thing is, and this well, right? Just lean on the people, take all the help. When somebody offers to come wash your dishes and do your laundry, my mother-in-law is visiting, and tonight she was like, let me clean up after dinner. I was like, sold. Don't have to ask me twice. So take all the help that people will offer you. Ask for help. I got much better at this second go around. I feel like there's this image that moms can do it all, which is true. Moms are freaking amazing, but also that puts an undue burden on moms to feel like if you have to ask for help, there's something wrong with you, or, you're not good enough, or you're not strong enough or capable enough. And that's just BS. I mean, we all need help. That's why it's been, the "it takes a village" quote is so true. And so asking for help, whether it's from your partner, I mean, I think that is also another thing to remember is that you're in this together, you're a team, and it can feel really hard to have that team mentality on those sleepless nights. But you are a team. And so asking for what you need, whether that's, hey, can you bring me some water? Something as simple as that, just not trying to be a superhero about it. There's no badge. The same thing with labor, right? I think I had two particularly challenging delivery situations. And there's this feeling of like, you have to get a badge when you're done, delivering your kid, but the badge is a healthy kid that came into the world. So no need to sort of do it all yourself. And then I think the third thing that I really appreciate a lot of people will tell you is it's all a phase, right? Like, which is both a blessing and a curse because at the one hand, it's a phase. So if it's a really hard phase, it's going to pass. But that means that the minute you figure it out, it'll be a new phase, and you'll be figuring something else out. So, my daughter is a great example of that. She just started back to in-person school, real person school, as she calls it, and she's loving it. She's having so much fun. And she's adjusted really well, but it brings a new bunch of challenges, which is that she's away from us all day. So in the evenings, she wants more time. She's procrastinating more at bedtime, so we had gotten to a good place, then something shifted. Now we got to get to another good place. But it passes. And frankly, the best thing about motherhood is a short memory. Like I barely, Taylor's about to be a year old, which is crazy. And I already barely remember how hard he was in the beginning, and he was hard. But I've forgotten because he's so wonderfully cuddly and sweet now. So that's great. You just gotta let it all go.
Corey, I worry that motherhood is going to challenge my weak spots, and two weak spots I have personally, two muscles, let's reframe, that I'm working on are one to like not take things personally, and also not to be so like success driven. Like I'm worried that it's gonna be hard to define what a successful day is in maternity leave. And so I'm curious on either front, taking things personally, or how to measure success. My box checking tendency is like any advice?
Yeah. I mean, I think, right. So success looks really different every different day has a different definition of success, right? Like in the early days, success might be taking a shower. And like that, you'll feel like a new person. And in another day, success might mean that you didn't throw your kid out the window because they were driving you so nuts. I mean, and then in another day, you might be the mom that's like Pinterest worthy and created a really cool activity for your kid. And that might be success. But the truth is, I mean, I think that the fact that your kid feels loved every day really is what matters, right? And some days that's going to look like the other night when I lost my cool on Alex, which thankfully I've gotten pretty good at not doing very often. But, I was just at the end of my rope and I felt terrible afterwards. And I just went back to her and said, Mommy's really sorry I yelled. It's never your fault when I yell. I'm working on managing my feelings, just like you're working on managing your feelings. And she looked at me and she said, "It's okay, Mommy. We all make mistakes." And I thought, okay, like it's actually really important for her to see that I'm not perfect all the time and that I make mistakes and that I'm learning and growing too. And so that was success, even though that day felt, I felt like I had totally failed as a mom because I lost my cool on my, kid. Who's the other thing somebody said, I forget, one of my favorite Instagram moms said, just remember, I think it's Busy Toddler, who if you don't follow, you should follow. Okay. She said, remember that there are condiments in your fridge that are older than your child. Right? And like just the fact that your kid's brain is just not capable of the kind of self-control and emotional regulation that you are going to expect of them. And so just, I think truth be told, like it's about whether your kid knows at the end of the day that you love them. And I have no doubt that your child will know that every day. So I think redefining success each day is a different day. Success is going to look different. Some days are going to, you're going to miss the target. Some days you're going to hit it and knock it out of the park. And but on the whole, right, like your kid's going to know they're loved, and that's what matters.
I watched Mr. Rogers as a kid, but it wasn't until I was an adult and I saw the Tom Hanks version and the documentary that I realized what an amazing guru he was actually in being able to talk about managing our emotions. Yeah. That was really like his whole agenda. I'm curious, you mentioned that that's something you work on too, is just managing your own emotions. Are there other like muscles that you're working on improving as a mom?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that it's funny, like the point you made about sort of kids and motherhood bringing out the muscles you need to work on. I think marriage is another thing that does that, right? It's like, oh, I'm not as good of a communicator as I thought I was, or, whatever else it might be. And I think motherhood's the same. It's like, well, I thought I had figured out how to keep my cool in tough and tense situations, but this is a new button that hasn't been pushed before. So definitely like patience and, emotional regulation. I think also your priorities just shift, right? I mean, so I often find myself saying, hey, I can't work past 5 o'clock. I can get back on in the evening once the kids are in bed, but I'm not going to give up that time. And so it forces you to kind of reprioritize what's most important to you. And while that's hard, I also feel like I'm more efficient now and more productive now than I ever was before I was a mom, because I'm working for that 5 o'clock to go see my kids, and And I don't want to waste any of those moments. So I think that's definitely something that I've gotten better at.
I love that you said that, because a lot of people see it in a very deficit-based way, like, oh, being a mom has hurt my work or other relationships. But actually, the fact that it's made you more efficient, more of a superhero to do it all.
No, and I think too, like the one, I'm all about looking for silver linings in this damn pandemic, but I think one of them is that it's been an equalizer in a lot of ways for working parents. I mean, I still think, no offense to the dads out there, but I still think it's different for moms. But, I just think about the fact that had Alex, the other day, I'm finishing up a Zoom call with the entire district cabinet from a school district down in Florida. And Alex walks in and is like, Mom, I have to poop. And in, like pre-COVID, I would have been like, oh my gosh, like, I'm so sorry. And, everybody just sort of laughed. It was like, oh yeah, I've been there. And so I do think it's given people permission, frankly, to be real about their lives. For so long, we felt like, I think we're supposed to pretend at work that we don't have kids. Like we're supposed to, somehow turn off this mother part of us, but you're always a mom. I mean, if Alex's school calls and I'm in the middle of a work thing, I'm going to answer it. And there should be no shame in that. So I think for me, and also I think for you as somebody who works in education, like I feel so much more invested I've always been invested in these kids and the work I'm doing, but now it's my daughter, who's going to be impacted by the ways in which the public school system is improving or not improving. And it's her friends. I think about the fact that so many of the kids in her class, like, have such different life and home experiences. And so it's her friends now. It's not just, somebody else's kids, right? Isn't that the title of Lisa Delpit's book? Anyway, but yeah, I think there's a lot of strengths that being a working mom brings. And I think we have to stop feeling like we have to pretend that it's this part of us that doesn't exist when it's 9 to 5.
Now, did you start your company before your firstborn, Alex, came around? So can you tell me a little bit about starting a company before kids, and then how kind of what trade-offs needed to happen? Speaking selfishly as someone who needs to figure out that transition as well.
Totally. Yeah. It's funny. I was just reminiscing with a friend that I started DeliverEd in September of 2016, and I found out I was pregnant in November. So I had just started this business, and here I am. I don't have any maternity leave policy because I work for myself. So I was a bit overwhelmed by the whole concept, but frankly, it's worked out so well for me. And, in no small part, thanks to other, working moms who have picked up the slack when I've been out on maternity leave. Shout out to my buddy, Rebecca. But I think, it's another sort of example of when things feel like they're falling apart and they're really coming together. So for me, I lost my job. My company that I had worked at for so long, for about 5 years, that I loved, I found out they were closing. I had just miscarried, and I was devastated. I'd saved up all this parental leave, family, sick leave or whatever. And then I lost this baby, and then I lost my job, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is, what else is going to come? And I remember some of my clients said, I was looking for jobs, nothing was really coming through. And my clients were like, well, if you're interested, we could still really use your help. Would you be willing to just sort of like keep working with us? And I thought, well, I guess in the interim, it's not that big of a deal. It's not hard to be a 1099 contractor. I'll just do it. And my co-founder, Nick, who I had started out at EDI, the former organization, as his intern, said, Corey, I think we could do something. Like, I think we could start a business. I was like, start a business? I don't know what that, I don't even know what an LLC is. How am I going to run a business? And he sort of gave me the encouragement. My Aunt Becky, who is also a momtrepreneur, of her kids are now older and grown, but still she said, I think you can do it. And so I thought, well, I'll just do it for as long as it makes sense until something else comes along. Well, here I am 5 years later, and I'm still doing it. And I feel very lucky. And so I think, I'm very privileged in that I knew that I had a safety net, right? Like if my business failed, I wasn't going to be out on the street. And so that is definitely a huge privilege I had to be able to take that leap. And then I just, I think I just trusted that my skills would follow me. So even if the job, even if my job changed or it didn't work out, I would still have those skills and I would find something else, right? I would try to have faith that I would find something else. And so, I really had to take a big leap of faith, and I'm really lucky that it's worked out.
What has surprised you about motherhood? I think of you as someone who's always prepared for everything. And I'm like, how much can I prepare now versus how much will I learn on the job? Like, what has surprised you?
That's a great question. I think, frankly, like so much of motherhood is learning on the job, right? I mean, I think I really, just like you, I'm the kind of person I like to prepare. I like to have a plan. And there's a lot of that you can do. But the truth is your kid, frankly, your kid's going to run the show. Like, especially if you end up with a strong-willed, independent child like my first one. But I always remind myself, someday I'm going to be grateful I'm raising a strong-willed, independent woman. It's just going to be whether I survive to see that day. But I think, the things that have surprised me really are just the ways in which people like come to your aid. I think about the ways in which my friends and my family have become just such confidants in my motherhood and in the way I think about my kids and my mothering. And I knew that was going to be the case. But it's amazing to watch other people love your kid that much. I just think it's such a gift to see, to see my Alex with her cousins. And, we are lucky enough to live really close to my brother and my sister-in-law, who's one of my best friends. And so just the way they love her, and, I knew that, but there's something about it that just, you can't understand until you're watching it. And then I think too, like, just how much they're their own person. When Alex went to school for the first time 2 weeks ago, I just was watching her with awe. I was like, this human, I grew this human in my body, in myself. And here she is, her own independent person, running. She almost didn't give me a hug. She's like, peace out, mom. I'm ready to go. And I was both like so proud of her and so sad. Like, oh, I wish you still needed me, and she's not even 4. But like, she already has such a personality and so much spirit and so much curiosity and so much to learn and teach you. I just think I didn't realize how much I was going to learn from my kids when they were, 3 years old. Like, you think your job is to teach them, and it is, but they're going to teach you all sorts of things too that you don't even know yet. You can't really imagine what that's going to be like.
I think a lot about values. Like, when I was getting married in 2019, it was like, how can we design the ceremony around our shared values? What are our shared values as a couple? And now as I enter motherhood, I'm like, well, what are the values that I want to instill in my children? What are the values that define our family? So I'm curious if you thought about what are the top values you want to instill in Alex and Taylor?
Yeah, it's such a fun thing to do because it's like you and your partner have created this bond in this way that you all kind of work together and what matters to you as a couple. And then you bring these beings into that. And it's really fun sorry, it's the ATV riders outside the window. It's really fun to think about. And so I think about it more from like mantras, like what are the phrases that I want my kids to have at their disposal? And those reflect our values. So for example, when Alex said the other day, like, it's okay, mom, everybody makes mistakes. Like, that's a phrase that I use with her all the time. And so these mantras so another one I use with her all the time is like, calm your body, because she has all these big feelings, or feelings come and feelings go. We say that a lot too. Wow. The other one we've been talking about a lot is, if at first you don't succeed, try again. Teamwork makes the dream work. Like, she'll say these things, and there are things, there's things, and she'll say, now the fun thing is she says them to Taylor, my son. Like, I'll hear her say to him, it's okay, Taylor, it's okay to cry. Feelings come and feelings go. And it's like, oh, like how awesome is that? She's internalizing these things. And so for me, those are like the symbols of the values I want her to have around, being a kind human and caring for other people and being persistent and, and getting back up when you fall. And, and accepting different kinds of people. That's the other thing that's really fun, is thinking about, we ran into a family at the park the other day, and it was a girl from her virtual school, and it was her mom, and she made a reference to the child's other mom. And I looked at Alex, and she just sort of said, oh, okay. And then later she said, yeah, so-and-so has two moms. Some families have one mom and one dad. Some families have two moms, two dads. And it was because we've talked about it and we've read stories about it. And to her, it's just like, that's what I told her. And so that's how it is. And so you just have this power, I think, in your fingertips as a parent to really form how they think about the world and what stories you tell them. I mean, I love, another big Instagram follow is Dr. Becky. She's fantastic. And she talks about telling your kids stories about times when you failed. Wow. So Alex will even ask me sometimes, like the other day, she was trying to screw the top on something and she couldn't quite get it. And she said, Mom, does this ever happen to you? And I mean, I don't remember the last time I couldn't screw the top on something, but I was like, yeah, sometimes it's really tricky. And then she didn't get as frustrated because they see you as these perfect people that never make mistakes. And so if you kind of demonstrate, or I'll tell her stories about how, I remember this one time when I was a kid and I was really afraid of bees. And Lolly, my mom, her grandma, Lolly had to teach me how to be brave around the bees. And that's total BS. I was never afraid. I mean, maybe I was afraid of bees, but I'm telling her this story to try to relate to her and to try to help her, feel like it's less, because I just think they're holding themselves to this standard that you as a grown-up can achieve, and they can't achieve that. And so reminding them that, you're doing that too. So I think it's just so fun to think about how you're shaping them, and then to see them becoming part of that, right? Like replaying those values out loud and acting them out.
Corey, I'm going to use one of those mantras during maternity leave. Feelings come and feelings go. I think that's brilliant. This is the baby room I'm in. I'm just going to paint it on a wall, or for myself, just if I'm crying, if I'm underslept.
Feelings come and feelings go.
I'm going to tell my partner too, Neil, so that he can also use it as a
seriously. It's we have to remind ourselves of that, right? Because you can feel like you're getting swallowed up. I mean, the other day she threw a massive fit. I don't even remember what it was about, to be honest. But it was massive. I mean, it was it doesn't happen often, thank God. But it was 45 minutes of just screaming and flailing and this and that. And afterwards, the amazing thing is that 2 minutes after it, she can be like, what is wrong with you, you crazy person? And then later on, we're sort of debriefing it, and I'm talking to her, remember earlier you were just having such big feelings and felt like you were going to, explode. You were so mad. And she's like, I said, and now look, now you're feeling totally happy and having such a great time. See how feelings can come and feelings go. So I just think they don't have the ability to really, and sometimes we don't, right? When you're in that dysregulated state, it's I don't know if I can survive this. It feels like it's going to take me over. But you can, and you will. And they, you got to let yourself feel those things to get to the other side.
I'm curious, Corey, about some of your coping strategies. We're hopefully getting out of what has been probably the hardest year for working women and moms everywhere. One, a pandemic. But two, for you personally, you have beautiful biracial children who will forever be perceived as a Black woman and a Black man, your son and your daughter. And our country is finally reckoning with this endless history of racial violence and injustice. I'm just curious, how do you cope? How have you been coping the past year?
Yeah. Some days better than others, right? I think for me, you and I are very similar in our extroversion. So the pandemic was really hard. I really struggled with, now that I'm able to hug people, I just forgot how much I missed hugging people. And so now that there's a little bit more, safety and normalcy, I'm trying to embrace that and get back to that. I've definitely gotten back into exercise. That's a huge one for me. It's hard when you're not sleeping through the night to get up early and exercise. It's really hard, but I always feel better when I do it. So I'm definitely trying to use that one. Other moms, texting my sister-in-law in the middle of the night, because I know she's up too. Hey, how's it going? You're not alone. Like that sort of like rah rah, for sure. And talking a lot about it. I mean, again, I'm privileged to have a lot of friends to talk to. Therapy. I'm a big proponent of therapy, and just processing. And then sometimes, frankly, just deciding not to engage. Like the George Floyd thing, I didn't really follow. I didn't watch any of the trial. I just decided I just personally wasn't in a place that I needed to do that. And again, talking to my kids, right? Like I see so much hope for the future in my kids. And in the way I talk to them about race and sexuality and all these things, in the hope that this next generation will be different. And my work gives me hope too. I mean, I did some focus groups with students recently, and this district has struggled with a persistent achievement or opportunity gap, depending on how you want to call it. And every group I do, teachers, principals, district leaders, I said, how do you think the district should tackle this? And there were ideas about, greater family engagement, all these things. And those are all good strategies. But the only group that said, look, we've got racism and bias in our schools was the students. Nobody else said anything about that. And so that gives me hope, because I don't think the next generation is going to settle for hiding behind the bullshit, right? Like they're just going to be real about it and say, like, if we really want to fix this, we have to talk about it, and we can't layer all these niceisms on top of it. We've just got to face the reality. And so while there's a long way to go, that does give me hope. And some days it's easier to hold on to than others, but I have to survive.
I think that's amazing. It's such a positive spin that the future, they're going to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. We'll leave it to them.
I've been working this past year a lot with educators who are burnt out because their job is also impossible. We have both been teachers who have burnt ourselves out. I'm just curious, what are some of the other projects that you're working with districts on? Because there's just endless needs in public education. So just, you don't have to name obviously the clients, but what are some of the top things you're seeing and working on right now through DeliverEd?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I'm doing a lot of work with districts that are trying to re-envision and emerge stronger. I mean, again, back to my silver linings theme, I feel like, while we already knew there were inequities and the system was not set up for success for a lot of students, COVID has made that even more. Like, we cannot ignore it. We can't sweep it under the rug. And so a lot of districts and schools are trying to figure out, how do we build back to whatever normal looks like, but it's not just going back to the ways that the system was failing kids before. We've got to emerge different from this pandemic. It would be a lost opportunity, frankly, to just try to go back to March of 2019. It feels like that long ago. 2020, to say like, oh, thank goodness, like everything's normal again. We're just going to go back to butts in seats and teacher at the front of the room. I think we're realizing now, look, lots of kids have access to technology, which was a pain in the ass to get there and took a lot of stress from these districts. But now we've got a lot of districts that had 5-year plans to get to 1-to-1 are now 1-to-1, and they did it in like 2 months because the pandemic forced it, right? Wow. And so how do we say, instead of ignoring all that technology and just coming back to face-to-face, like how do we use that technology to really enhance instruction? So I think that piece is a really exciting opportunity. A lot of my districts are also thinking about burnout and retention of teachers and diversity of their teaching staff. And there's, how hard that job is to begin with. I my hat is off to all teachers who have survived the last year. And it is Teacher Appreciation Week, so make sure, it's also, did you know that like Mother's Day, Teachers Appreciation Week, and Nurses Appreciation Week are all the same? Because we better squeeze all the appreciation for traditionally female jobs into 1 week, because God forbid the other 51 weeks of the year. Anyway.
We've been running YaYa workshops, and I'm like, wait, discount code for teachers, Teach 21, moms, Mom 21, because it's like everybody deserves to be celebrated this week.
Seriously. Yeah. So anyway, I do think again, I think we've got a lot of work to do in education, as you know, but people are talking about it in new ways. There's new energy around it. And I think that the other thing that was really fascinating about the pandemic was like districts are often quick to say, well, we're different than the other districts, or, our context is different. Our student population is different. They have different problems than us. But the truth was when the pandemic hit, every district was trying to figure out how to move all their kids virtual to get, like, everybody was in the same boat, in the same hot mess. And so there was a lot of opportunity to learn from each other and to kind of set aside those differences and say, how are we all in this together and how can we learn from each other? And so I think there's a lot of power in that, and we should capitalize on that going forward.
Gosh, I'm feeling very inspired by you. Like that there are ways to be excited about the future and what's coming and how far we've come. Corey, one superpower of yours that I just want to point out, because you mentioned texting Molly, your sister-in-law, late at night. You are so good at checking in. Like for me personally, when my dad was sick, after my dad died, months and years, after now, my dad passed away 5 years ago, you still check in with me. Through my pregnancy, you've checked in with me, and I have no doubt that you are going to keep checking with me. Sometimes I'm like, does Corey have like a recurring reminder to like, how do you do it? How are you so good at checking in with your friends? No. You are a mom and a business owner,
Yeah, I know how much it means to me when people reach out to me. There's Kimmy. And so I really try hard anytime somebody crosses my mind, because, we all think about the people we love all the time. And it's easy to just say like, oh yeah, I wonder how Jackie's doing, and then put my head back down and do the dishes. I try really hard whenever somebody that I love crosses my mind to tell them, to just say like, hey, I thought of you today. Hope you're doing okay. And I that selfishly brings me a lot of joy, just to make sure people feel that love. So I really try hard to just be honest about like who's on my mind and how do I make sure they know that. And then I think also about just the times in my life where I've needed those small moments of care, and how much they've carried me through some of the hard things that I've been through in my life, and paying it back and paying it forward just feels so important. Because I mean, nobody can do any of this stuff that we're trying to do on a daily basis by themselves. And we have this amazing ability to be connected to each other. I mean, I just think about how many times I like scroll aimlessly on Instagram, like random people I don't know, and I'm watching their stupid TikToks or whatever. And, it's the least I can do to pick two people that I love and, check in with them. Like that's a better use of my time than scrolling TikTok, for sure.
I've talked to just dozens, if not hundreds of women this year who feel like they're failing in all aspects of their lives. I think partly many of us are like list task people, and that feels endless. And so if you might always feel behind, I'm just curious, I like to call that a scarcity mindset. Are there any strategies you recommend to overcoming a scarcity mindset, or even reframing to, be appreciative of like what you do have?
Yeah. I mean, I'm still working on that one. Again, I really go back to like the question you asked earlier about sort of redefining success. Like somebody said this to me the other day. I think it was actually a client of mine from a big foundation, sort of one of the higher ups at this foundation. And I'd prepped for this conversation with him, and I was like it's a big contract. I needed to make sure it went well. And at the end, he said, I'm just so grateful for everything you do and for doing it, while you have two young kids at home during a pandemic. And the fact that my client, and I was like, you know what, you're damn right. Like, yeah, like I'm pretty badass, and I think it's just so easy to forget in the sort of mundane day-to-day world that we're living in, that like, it feels like every day is the same. It feels like my kitchen is a mess at the end of every day. And if I showed it to you, it is a mess. But the fact that, again, like those small moments, I try so hard to take in those small moments when I see Alex say something kind to Taylor, or I see, I don't know, one of my districts that I work with, like decide to create a specific equity goal in their strategic plan when they'd never talked about it before. Like those small moments of victory and sort of using those to give myself more energy, to realize that, yeah, I mean, my to-do list is never like the idea of to-do list getting to 0 is just like, why bother to have that goal? It's just, you're never going to get there. So it's not a helpful goal to have. It's like, am I keeping my children alive? Am I paying my bills on time? Like, those things. And like, back to your question about keeping in touch with people, like, do the people I love feel that? And am I staying connected with them? And really the rest of it, like, the dishes can wait. My husband will hate me for saying this, but like, the dishes can wait till tomorrow. It's all right. It might, have to scrub a little harder, but it's all right.
I love this idea of reframing and recalibrating success, because truly, if I start a Monday and I set impossible goals, I will feel really terrible on Friday. And so I do think it is an evolving process to figure out what is doable and what does success look like. So I love hearing that. Corey, as I mentioned at the beginning, I've known you since you were 10. You've always been a superhero to me. You've always been so grounded and wise, in touch with your feelings, and always a natural leader. I'm curious, how do you feel that you've changed or evolved since becoming a motherhood? And maybe it's just muscles that have gotten even stronger. But do you see yourself differently now as a mom than you did before?
It's a good question. I think, I don't know. I feel like, I don't know where I read this once. It was in a poem or something, but somebody said, I'm more me than I have ever been before.
Oh.
And I think that's kind of how I feel. It's like, I feel different for sure. There's so much about my life that's different, but to be honest, I mean, you're going to feel this way, like 2 months from now, you're gonna be like, what was it like before we had a kid? Like, was that a thing? I don't remember. I mean, it's the same thing when Taylor came, when I was expecting Taylor, and those last few months before he arrived, I was like, oh, I'm really going to miss it just being me and Alex. And I do. And that was actually a really hard transition, but now it's like, of course Taylor, like what was like before him? I don't know. I don't remember. And so motherhood is sort of the same way. It's like, I've evolved, I'm sure, in lots of different ways, but it's just into the me that I've always been becoming. Right. And I think for me, it's made the parts of me that are both, like you said, sort of my superpowers, but also the hardest things about being me. It's made those even more real, right? Like, I love so deeply. I've always been that way. And it's such a gift, right? It's such a gift. And it's also so hard. And with my kids, it's like, just today we went for a walk and Alex got a new bike, and she's had it for 2 weeks. She went from not being able to get the pedals to move to being like flying down the street. And I just have to like let her, yesterday she fell off it. So that was rough, but like, I just have to realize, like, she's going to fall sometimes, but kids fall off their bikes and they're okay. And it's just, I can like feel myself, right? My anxiety rising. And I just have this urge to like protect her and to, save her from the hurt that's inevitable in her life. And I think about the hurt of falling off a bike versus the hurt she's going to experience, as a 13, 15-year-old girl. And I've got to build those muscles now, because it's just going to get harder to sort of watch and absorb that with her. But I do think for me, like, it's about finding new ways to flex the muscles you already have. I mean, so much of you and who you are is perfectly suited to be an amazing mom. And I think there'll be ways that you surprise yourself, like, ooh, I didn't think I'd be so good at this part, but I am, or I thought I'd be better at this, like I need to work on that. But just being, just saying, okay, well, that's interesting. Or the phrase we used to use at EDI was, how fascinating, right? Like, it's just how fascinating. And you just keep going.
We're coming up on Mother's Day on Sunday. I'd love to hear how you're celebrating. I'm also, though, curious how this has grown your own relationship with your amazing mom, Beth Sullivan, who was awarded the Shining Star Nurse of 2021. I want to shout it out. We have similar values, and we're both very close with our mothers. And so I just love to learn about what it's like to have your mom while becoming a mom, and now a mom of two.
Yeah. Oh, I feel so lucky to have my mom on this journey with me. You know, my brothers, oh, is that my baby? Um, my brothers, sometimes you hear like phantom cries. The other day I heard crying, I thought it was Taylor, and it was actually the feral cats outside. I was like, this is just not good. But, you know, my brothers tease my mom. They're like, I don't think you loved us as much as you love those grandbabies. And I'm not sure they're wrong, to be honest. But it's, you know, like, again, sort of the moments that really make your heart swell for me are watching my parents and my mom, especially with my kids, and the way they love her and the way she loves them. I mean, grandparent love is like just the best. And so for me, I think it makes you realize, you know, I've always appreciated my mom and the sacrifices she made and the woman she is and the way she worked for us as kids and raised us. But like when you do it, you're like, wow, you know, you're even more amazing than I thought. And I'm sure you will feel the same way about your mom. So I just think it deepens your appreciation for your own mom. And for us, for my mom and I, like, it's made us, I think, able to share a whole new experience together, right? I mean, she was there for both of my kids' births, which the second one wasn't necessarily planned that way, but thanks COVID for that. But I think that, you know, she's watched me become a mom. She's my biggest cheerleader. I mean, talk about people that text you at just the right moments. I mean, my mom will send me a text after a long day and be like, you know, I'm just so impressed by the mom you are. Those kids are so lucky to have you. And I'm like, oh, thanks, Mom, because I do not feel that way today. And so just, you know, her encouragement, her reminders of what really matters. And, you know, she's also raised 4 relatively, I would say, successful kids. And so reminding me that it's a long game, right? Like on the days when you feel like you failed, right? Being able to say like, you know, you're not going to remember this someday, right? Like, which she doesn't mean to be dismissive in that, but just to say like, you know, it's going to be okay. I mean, I remember when I was, not to get into a controversial topic, but when I was sleep training Taylor, and I just could barely keep myself together. I was like, I wanted to be crying right alongside with him. Uh-oh, did I lose you?
No, you're here.
Okay. And and I'm texting my mom. It's like, 11 o'clock. He's been screaming for 2 hours. I'm like, Mom, I don't think I can do it any longer. She's like, hold strong. Don't go in there. You won't remember this. You can do it. You're doing the right thing. You're helping him out. He needs to learn to sleep, whatever. It's like, they've been through it, they've been there, and they can just remind you and encourage you that that it gets better, it gets easier, it gets different, that you're doing a good job. And for me, I just think like she is just the best friend to my 2 kids. Like my Alex in particular just loves my mother, loves her Lolly. And why wouldn't you, and it's the best. She can, she comes over, she comes with cotton candy and, like there are no rules when Lols is in charge. So it's an amazing gift to have her.
You mentioned that sleep training is a controversial topic. I actually love controversial opinions, partly because I grew up with a mom who was so supportive. Her answer was always, whatever you think is best. And I'm like, no, I want opinions. I want people who have strong opinions. And so are there other, any controversial topics you have opinions on?
Oh my gosh. I mean, so breastfeeding is obviously one, right? People will guilt the hell out of you if you decide you don't want to nurse. And I just, my friend who's a kindergarten teacher is like, it's not like when kids walk in on the first day, I'm like, you were breastfed, you were bottle fed, nobody knows, like it's just, and look, I nursed both my kids and I love nursing them. And I feel very lucky to have done that. But also like, if that doesn't work for you for whatever reason, and even if that reason is you can't handle getting up 3 times every night, for months at a time, then fine, right? Like whatever is best for you is also best for your kid. So I think that one for sure. Sleep training seems to be one of the biggest ones that people just have so many opinions about, and it's going to damage your child forever and this, that, and the other. And look, I've of course Googled and read the research, and you can basically, just like you can with anything, you can find research to back up whatever side you want to be part of on that debate. But again, back to my very first piece of advice, like you've just got to trust your intuition. And what your kid, again, what's best for your kid is best for you. And there's a point at which you can't handle the sleep deprivation anymore, then you got to find the way to make it work for yourself. So I think those things are the things where you got to do your research, right? Like, I think it is helpful to do the research and then make your decision and then stick with your decision, right? Like, believe in yourself and don't second guess yourself, because people are going to try. That's the thing about momming. Like, people are going to try to make you feel like you're doing it wrong, or they've got it figured out and you don't, and they don't. They've made mistakes. No, there is no such thing as a perfect mom. And if they're telling you they are, then they're not, because they're not being honest about their challenges, right? So I just think remembering that and doing what makes the most sense and what works for your family is going to be the best thing you can do.
I personally started this interview series because I feel like people don't always talk about the hard stuff. And I love talking about the hard stuff and vulnerable conversations. And I'm just curious, is there anything we haven't discussed yet that you feel like people don't talk enough about in all of it? You mentioned a miscarriage, and that other parts of that, or pregnancy, or the first.
Here's Peter coming in right on cue and turning the TV on.
Oh, hi, Peter.
I'm moving my spot.
No, I mean, this is real life.
This is real life. You can see my messed up kitchen. I think that, well, no jokes. Like, I do think the part about like how your marriage changes, and just how hard it is to readjust to having this third party, and the ways in which you sort of don't anticipate the stress that it's going to place on your marriage. I think it can make you stronger for sure, but it can really totally shift that dynamic. I mean, everything from the like stupid myth around that like you can have sex at 6 weeks after you have a baby, like the doctor clears you and the husband comes out of that appointment like, all right, and the wife's like, stay the hell away from me. Like, I mean, that everything from that to just like, what does it look like when you're both, at your wit's end and you both need something from each other and you're not getting it, and how do you navigate that, or differences in your perspectives on discipline. I mean, I think the newborn phase in the first year of a kid's life is so hard, but there's a lot that's kind of easy in the sense that you're not having to make a lot of choices about, what should we do when our kid lies to us about something, or how should we talk to them about, when they ask us, what Alex did the other day, how did Taylor get in your belly? And so I think that like being on the same page is important, but also giving each other space to be their own parent and like figure it out, unless it's something that you believe is truly going to damage your kid. It's really important to let, I think, your partner and you, as long as you come from a shared values place, which you were talking about before, to let people figure it out. No, there is no one right way to do it. And it's actually really helpful for kids to learn that there are different routines and different rules with different people. I mean, Alex will tell you, like, daddy does it this way and mommy does it this way. And, we don't have to do bedtime the same way. We don't have to, say the same answer to everything. We have to be on the same page. We need to back each other up. But I think those conversations about how is it different, how is it testing and straining you, and the times when, frankly, you really miss the before. Right? Like, I love being a mom. I wouldn't trade my children for anything. They're the greatest gift I've ever been given. And like, there are moments when I'm like, God, what I wouldn't give for like a week of going to happy hour after work with no, like, it's just, and that's okay. It doesn't make you less of a mom. It doesn't make you less of a grateful mom to have moments in which you miss the life before and the freedom of the before. So I think we have to be honest with each other about that and stop shaming each other when somebody says like, man, this shit's really hard. Or man, I sometimes wish, I long for the days before kids. Not a bad thing. That's just truth. Both things can be true. You can love being a mom and you can miss the before times.
Thank you for being so honest and open always. I just love and adore you. I mentioned how I worry that motherhood it'll strengthen what's already strong about me and also exacerbate the weak points. Feel the same way about my marriage. My husband and I are very different. I'm an extrovert. He's an introvert. I remember when we first started dating, I would like judge how he spent his downtime. And it's like, it's people's downtime. Let them spend their downtime however they want. But communication has always been something we've worked on. And so I'm a little bit just like terrified. That's like, I know motherhood is going to make communication even harder because I'm going to be more tired and more prone to resentment. And it's like the roommate dilemma. I'm going to see all the things that I do and not the things that he does. And I'll just try to vent those things to you, Corey, and not at him. Is one plan. Any other advice?
No, but I mean, actually, I think there's, again, I read a lot about this kind of stuff because I'm always looking for tools in my toolbox. I really believe, one, just having grace with each other, like, finding ways to repair, not feeling like you got to do it right the first time, but finding ways to repair. So for example, like, saying things like, hey, hold up, that didn't come out the way I wanted. I'm really tired. I'm sorry. Let me try that again, and giving each other the grace to try it again. So, having some of those strategies in your toolbox are, I think, really helpful. And then I think it's really important not to hold things in. Like, I think for me, that's when resentment starts to build, is like, there's been 6 times today when I felt really frustrated with you and I didn't tell you. And now on the 7th time, about the fact that you left your shoes in the stairwell, like, I lose my shit. And you're like, what the heck? I just left my shoes in the stairwell. When in my mind, it's like, yeah, you did that and these 6 other things I didn't tell you about that really frustrated me. So I've either got to learn to let the things go and truly let them go, or I've got to tell them to you in a helpful way, right? A complaint, not a criticism. And then find a way to move forward from there. Because I think the resentment builds when you don't communicate your needs, when you don't take care of yourself. And for me, that's actually one of the things I'm continuing to work on as I'm like, give you a break. How can I give you a break this weekend? And my instinct is always to say, I just want a nap, which is true. I do just want a nap, but also saying like, okay, maybe I should get out of the house and go get my nails done, or go to lunch with a girlfriend and not feel bad about that. Like, I'm entitled to that time and I need to ask for that time. And if I find if I go weeks and weeks without taking that downtime or that me time, that's when the resentment really starts to build. And so just, again, asking for what you need, not feeling ashamed of the fact that you need a break, and not trying to read your partner's mind. Like, we cannot expect, Peter says this to me all the time, like, I can't read your mind. You have to tell me what it is you want and need. And of course, in a perfect world, he would know every want and need that I have before I do, but that's just not realistic. That's not a helpful bar to hold someone to. We can't do that for our partners. So there's no, and we're amazing. So there's no way they can do that for us. And so I think just remembering to say, right, like, it would really help me if you would do this, or I'm feeling particularly tired today. It'd be so helpful for me if you would do this thing. And it's like 90% of the time when you say it like that, they'll do it. And then you've avoided a whole thing, versus like staring at the trash that still hasn't been taken out and hoping that they'll see it and figure it out and take it out before you get mad, right? It's like, it reminds me of I'm sure you did this back in middle school, where we would be like secretly testing our boyfriends. Like, if he doesn't call me tonight, that means I'm going to break up with him, right? It's over. But how the hell is he supposed to know that tonight is the test? Like, we have to be more honest about our needs.
Thank you. One thing that's top of mind for me right now, and I'll make it one of the last questions because I know we're coming up on time. My body is changing. I weigh 200 pounds, Corey. And on one hand, I'm like, okay, if I'm lucky enough to breastfeed, I'll lose weight. I've always been great about exercise. I love exercise. Not been great about discipline around food, but it's just still, I see me in the reflection. And on one hand, I'm like, okay, yay, beautiful maternal woman, pregnancy, yay. On the other hand, I'm like, who is that person?
Yes.
Any thoughts? I'm just like, for women dealing with body image issues, how to navigate just like self-love and around
oh my gosh.
my body.
My Alex asked me the other day if I was having another baby because my belly looked big. So I'm right there with you. And my baby's almost a year old, right? So it changes you. But I really allow myself to feel all the ways about that, right? Like if there's a day when I'm like, ugh, I just don't love my body today, I don't love my body today. I'm not going to force myself to like fake it, right? But on other days, like Taylor is super fond of giving me raspberries on my belly. And you know, he can get some real good sound coming out of there. And it's adorable, right? And like that, every time he does it, I'm like, God, how amazing that you were in that belly. Like I grew you in that belly. Like that is and now you're blowing raspberries out. I mean, just insane. So to both like appreciate that for the miracle that is, but also be like, you know, it's kind of hard to not have the bathing suit body I used to have. But not holding yourself hostage to that. It's like, okay, you know, do I wish that I looked as good in my old clothes as I did before? Sure. And that's okay. It's okay to wish for that. Also, am I going to embrace and like buy the mom jeans? You know, for Christmas, I asked explicitly, I was like, buy me some high-waisted jeans because I'm tired of squeezing into these jeans that don't look good on me. You know, this is my new body. And it's not about getting back to where you were because you're not the person you were before. And your body is not the body it was before. It's grown a freaking human. Like that is unreal. It's so unbelievable. And so I think it's okay to both miss that, but also just to like try really hard to focus on the miracle and follow. This is where I do think following other women who are honest about that and who post pictures of real postpartum bodies versus like, you know, these celebrity trainers that have, or celebrities that have trainers that get them back to their pre-body, whatever. Like that's not helpful for anyone. I don't know why we even pretend that that's like a normal thing in this culture. So I think it's fair. And I'm glad you're saying that because I think we need to be more honest about the fact that it's hard to embrace your new body. And it's hard because your partner doesn't. I mean, maybe, I don't know, Neil's probably put on a little pandemic weight with you or something, but not the same as you have, right? And so it's hard when your partner, you feel like you've had to make all of those sacrifices and they haven't. And again, back to resentment, right? Like I can't wait till the day that men can carry babies and nurse and all those things so that we can share some of the load.
Well, just to close, just for our truly one last piece of advice, you know me really well. Any advice that you would give to Neil, my husband, that I can share with him tonight, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm sure you've done the love languages test. What's your love language?
Words and touch.
Yeah. Words. Yeah. So touch is an interesting one, right? Because
that might change.
Well, it might change, but it's really interesting because when you have a baby, especially if your baby's nursing, like you're going to be touched all day. But it's not going to be like, you know, by your partner. So for some women, they have this feeling at the end of the day of like being totally touched out. It's like, I do not want another human being anywhere in my, you know, vicinity. Like I'm done with people. You may feel that way. You may not, I don't know. But I think in terms of words, that's definitely not going to change. So I think for you, my advice to Neil would be to like find those moments in which he sees you doing something amazing, right? Whether that's like nursing for the 25th time that day and like wincing through the pain as your baby latches onto your boob, or, you know, getting up to change the baby's diaper for the 15th time. Of course, you're going to do all those things. Every mom does those things, but like noticing them and saying it out loud, right? Like, wow, Jackie, like, thank you so much for being up 7 times last night with the baby. You know, you're so amazing. You're such an amazing mom. I think the more he can reaffirm for you what you already are going to know about yourself, but might forget, that's going to make you feel loved. It's going to make you feel closer to him. It's going to make him feel more part of the process. I think a lot of dads early on, especially, feel like there's not a whole lot for them to do. Like they can change the diapers, and like hold the baby, but you know, the baby's going to need you most in the beginning if you're nursing. And so giving you that love will make him feel valuable and useful, and will make you feel loved and appreciated too.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, your friendship, and your bottomless love. I love that you acknowledged that at the beginning of it is something that has been so true about you ever since we were 10, is that you love so hard and so deeply. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you so much, Corey.
I love you, Jack.
Mwah.
Can't wait to see. By the way, how are you going to tell me that baby came?
Neil or my mom are on communications details, so they're on.
Because if I find out from Facebook, I'm going to be mad at you. I want you to know.
Oh my God, that would never happen.